there, I'm Abby. I'm with LDB Capital. We invest in people building businesses powered by visual technology. We thrive on collaborating with deep technical teams that leverage computer vision, machine learning, and artificial intelligence in order to analyze visual data. This is our Women Leading Visual Tech series. The purpose of the series is to highlight some of the top ladies whose work in visual technologies are revolutionizing business and society. We hope that by cultivating a group of phenomenal researchers, entrepreneurs, technologists, and investors, that we build a community of women and underrepresented genders who help each other succeed within the visual tech space. In this episode, I had the pleasure of chatting with Karin Andrea Stephan. She's a serial entrepreneur, a community leader, and a startup coach who's also an expert in mental health. Karin has deep domain expertise in tracking mental health, and her recent master's thesis titled Therapist in the Ear, How Hearables Can Extend Efficacy of Treatment into a Patient's Daily Life was completed in 2020 at SRH University in Riedlingen, Germany. In 2021, she co-founded Earkick to build the world's first data-driven mental health tracker via multimodal sentiment analysis of physiological biomarkers. The Earkick iOS app provides automated measurements and actionable suggestions based on real-time data about your mental health. At LDV, we've had the pleasure of partnering with Earkick since the earliest days, and I really enjoyed this conversation, diving more deep into Karin's expertise in mental health, her passion for making it objectively measurable, and some of her lessons learned for other entrepreneurs out there. I hope you give it a listen and let us know what you think. Enjoy. Hi, Karin.
Hi, Abby.
How are you doing today? Thanks so much for joining us for the Women Leading Visual Tech series.
Oh, wow. It's such an honor to be on, and thank you for having me. It's a great day to be talking to you.
Absolutely. Looks like it's nice and sunny in Switzerland. So it's nice here. It's a little cold these days. It's January in upstate New York. So I'm a little chilly, but that's what fires are for, right?
Yeah, we'll get all warmed up now.
Fantastic. Well, so like the way that we usually kick off most of these conversations is I love to start out by asking, how do you tell a 2-year-old what you do?
Oh, wow. Measuring mental health. So think of it as like we make drawings of how a person is feeling inside. Think clouds and sunshine or thunderstorms. And we draw these little emojis a person carries inside, sad, happy, tired, or grumpy ones, and how they change. And the more detailed the drawing is, the more a person can understand what's going on inside herself. And the better she can do something about the emojis that are not okay.
That's great. It's actually really hard, even from just like an emoji perspective, to teach people how to identify how they're actually feeling, right? Like, I've got a 4-year-old, and one of the things we do every morning is I lay out all of like the emojis in front of her and I say, so how are you feeling today? So she can self-select and start to identify how she's feeling. And so, understanding what's going on inside of you is a hard journey. What has made you so passionate about mental health or trying to understand and measure it better?
So I've always been interested in what goes on inside. But I think my co-founder and I, we repeatedly witnessed close relatives, friends, and colleagues slip into mental health disorders without anyone noticing. And, when mental health disorders hide in plain sight, it's frustrating. People's lives are tragically impacted, and you keep wondering, who's next and why didn't we saw this coming? So it can be any one of us. And we dug into that question, knowing that there's 8 billion people on the continuum of mental health. And we realized that there's a huge gap because there's no real objective measurement, and you can't manage, let alone improve what you can't measure. We joke about it and say it's like wanting to keep a healthy weight and knowing thousands of diets, but having no scale assess the progress and to know where you're at, right? And so we, and I especially, want it to be that scale, that accountability piece for mental health, so that we can really improve things at scale.
Yeah, absolutely. That's such a great way to put it, right? Like, we're so used to tracking things like our BMI, our weight, our resting heart rate. And we do those every day with wearables, but there's nothing out there from a mental health perspective. And especially today, as we're dealing with everything in the pandemic, and so much of our interactions are limited to, a Zoom screen with others. We know that there's severe burnout, there's tons of anxiety and stress that's out there today that we're just not seeing in others or able to pick up on, because we're not even in the same room as them, let alone how it was even pre-pandemic.
Yes, it's such a sad thing to have all this data kind of being collected somewhere and not putting it together, like in the drawing I described, right? There's huge potential in getting this going, and that's why we decided to found Earkick.
So what put you onto this idea that hearables were the way forward in order to start measuring mental health? I know that Earkick, right, is built around your master thesis that was on this, but where did that start?
So it started because right now we're living in very exciting times. Technology is advancing in leaps, right? And we have all this knowledge around what can be done with physiological science. We have a lot of knowledge about, a person's journey when they have a mental health issue. But what's missing is kind of an intervention or a support that is not episodic, that is ongoing, continuous. And Hearables, now here comes the technical part, is part of this, I think, soon to be seen trend of augmented reality, be it glasses or Hearables are basically nothing else than these cute little earbuds, but they're with more functions, way smarter, things that we're going to see coming very soon. A person with a mental health disorder really, really benefits from early detection of a developing issue, from a full understanding of physiological signs, because this can prevent unnecessary suffering at a big scale. And this applies throughout, the whole journey. It's before they develop something, while they try to seek help, during treatment, but also after treatment. It's kind of like this ongoing knowing where you're at. And most everyone with their phones, with their, as you said, wearables, is already collecting this data. Hearables would take it a step further, because in the ear, you have amazing opportunities. You can measure not only heart rate and temperature and movement and collect voice, even brain waves, but you can also feed people with the perfect intervention. You can be there for someone in the moment and give them actionable suggestions that are tailored to their history, that tailored to what they're doing in therapy, that are tailored to their environment and to where they're at. And this makes Hearables a perfect companion. It's like having this trusted little companion sitting in your ear that gives you a second opinion that, has your back, on top of everything else that you can have on a mental health journey.
Absolutely. And so, in order to do this, right, in order to read people's vital signs and do the sentiment analysis of their voice and of their face and everything, you guys are using some really state-of-the-art machine learning and taking a multimodal approach to track mood and mental health. In our series earlier, like in Women Leading Visual Talk, we spoke with Rana Al-Kalobi, who is the founder of Effectiva. And effective computing. And she says that today, AI is like a toddler in terms of sophistication and understanding human emotions. But you guys are really making waves on this. Can you tell me a little bit more about the AI that's really powering the tools to listen to people's voices and to understand not just what they're saying, but how they're feeling?
Sure. So I love the toddler analogy, by the way, because never in the life of humans do we have a steeper learning curve than in the toddler age. And we both know that. I'm convinced that we will really have tremendous progress in AI, emotion AI, voice and visual biomarkers and multimodal approaches in the coming years. So it's exciting to be working in that field. But how it works is you can think of spoken communication and facial expression as the windows into your mind and your soul. Voice and visual are not only highly ubiquitous biomarkers, they also carry very rich information about how we're doing. Our mother, for example, she would look at us as a child, at our face, and listen to our voice to identify, and detect changes in our well-being for our own good. And the AI does the same. It is just also especially helpful in detecting and monitoring incremental changes. So it's the mass of rich data, putting it together in like an engine in a smart way that you get the full picture, like the drawing about where somebody's at and where they're heading towards. So people suffering from depression, let's say, they speak slower and they pause more than a healthy individual. People with anxiety show tiny changes in their vocal tone, and that AI can detect that. So once captured and processed, the data will help to define a personal baseline and monitor trends.
Interesting. And so it sounds like, like you've got vocal tone in there, you've got some sentiment analysis. What other things are you tracking today?
So there is not just voice and visual, you also have the environment and things that people do. They also affect and influence well-being. They could be, doing a lot of exercise. They could be doing mindfulness sessions and stuff, and that all plays into it. So the current app that we built is focused on anxiety and stress, and it tracks heart rate, especially when you're doing an exercise, breathing exercise, for example. It tracks the voice, visual, typing patterns, mood, anxiety levels, panic attacks, especially symptoms. There's tons of symptoms, activities and goals, location, HRV, and in the movement that will follow soon. And some of it still needs manual input at the moment. But with every member that joins and every iteration that we make, we get closer to that full automation that we envision.
I mean, it really is just a tremendous amount of inputs that's really advising the AI at this point in time.
Yes.
I know it was really funny for me because as I use Earkick, right? And it asked me what are my symptoms, or how am I feeling today? And sometimes it's like the first time that I've ever told anybody how I'm actually feeling today, but then the symptoms that it lists out, I'm like, oh, is that a thing? Do other people have trouble staying asleep? And then the sheer fact that Earkick then, the recommended things are the breathing patterns in order to help me go back to sleep. And it works with my watch and all of these other things. It's really it's a very interesting and high touch way to collect so much information about people and how they're feeling. One of the big questions that I'm sure that you guys get all the time is, what are you doing with that data? Outside of advising your AI, where does that data go? How is it protected and stored today?
So it's computing at edge, which means only zeros and ones leave the phone. It's all done right now. It's done only on the phone. There's no hearables. There's no additional hardware, as you said. You can connect the Apple Watch, yes, but everything is done on the phone. There is no login required because it's very important. We're Swiss, we like privacy. And it's very important that people feel safe. They if they don't say the truth to their therapist or a family, that's their thing. But in the app, they should really, that's just them. And they should really be like looking in the mirror in the morning and saying, hey, how are you? And this is what I feel. Those are my thoughts. That's what I'm going to do. That's what I did. And kind of keep like a very rich journal that is honest and that will inform our engine and our technology to the best.
Absolutely. And so, from a long-term vision of Earkick, what does the next 5 years look like? Like, what are you hoping to be able to accomplish with Earkick?
A lot. In 5 to 10 years, our technology will enable individuals and organizations to shorten the time between the onset of a health disorder and a suitable individualized intervention. It will empower them to manage their mental health, their mental well-being, just as they manage their physical health from anywhere and at any time. And they will enjoy continuous support rather than episodic and reactive, unsustainable care. Services and products, I believe, will only be reimbursed and paid if they show efficacy and the desired outcomes and if they're data-driven, rather than what we're doing right now is relying on trial and error approaches and counting the hours that we spend in therapy. Earkick, in short, will help humanity save time, money, and suffering, and will help to prevent future mental health epidemics like the one we're going through now.
Absolutely. And, just kind of related to that, in terms of real time, I know we started to talk about it a little before. Mental health today, not only is it totally subjective based on the therapist that you have and what you tell them, but it's done only incrementally, as you mentioned. And so Earkick is just going to revolutionize the way in which we approach mental health in order to make it objective and to make it real time applicable to real people within your daily life, is what it seems like to me.
Yes, and it will make it accountable too. And accountability empowers quality. And so I like to think of it that, yes, you need to measure and put data to the whole thing. And that makes it accountable for a lot of players in this. And it also opens the door to improve, because then you know what works and what doesn't work on an individual level, but also on a general level. And then it's not, looking back in hindsight knowledge or gut feeling. It's really something that is, proven and fed on real time, real people's data.
Absolutely. And you mentioned businesses in there, right? Like, we know that there's been like a tremendous amount of burnout in the past 2 years, right? Like, was it over 21% of people report an increase in burnout and physical symptoms of stress related simply to work? Why is it that you're focused on work? Is it to take on that aspect of it? Or why do you think that this is a great place to solve this by going to businesses first instead of direct to consumer? Well,
I think all the avenues that we would take with measurement and will take are very helpful. But businesses, their complete productivity depends on that. And it's not just the health of individual members of the workforce, it's the whole workforce that can be completely imbalanced. And there is only one more thing needed, like a pandemic or another challenge, and the whole thing can really go south. So we believe that individuals and organizations will profit from having this ongoing measurement and this ongoing support. And when the waves are not as high, so you don't go down the rabbit hole as a company or as an individual, and you don't have to recover all this time, you can keep these ups and downs much more balanced because you have in real time intervention, you have in real time help and knowledge and insight. And there's so many things that can come out of this. Other technologies, other business models, everything just needs to have that scale, that accountability piece.
Absolutely. And just measurement in general, right? Some way of measuring. And so that makes a ton of sense. As I think about your line in terms of recovery, does anybody ever recover from mental health issues? Or do you think that this is something that, like, the reason why Earkick is so profound is because it's going to work with you over the course of your entire life as you go through the ebbs and flows of your health journey?
So people do recover from mental health issues, not from all. There is some severe cases where you just, you have to live with as well as you can with given resources. But what we really see as important is that people that they realize early on all the possibilities they have to live a very fulfilled and balanced life. And that has a lot to do with psychoeducation, with having the right things in the right moment, in the right surrounding, and the right knowledge around, where you don't necessarily have to go all the way down to witness that. I think there are things in life that you can't prevent. I mean, you can have terrible incidents and triggers, but having the right approach that works for you, whether it's in a company or it's an individual, will make all the difference. And there is all this knowledge out there. There is all this content, all these amazing therapies and people. It just needs to be put on a scale. Yeah. And it needs to be individualized. It needs to be precision intervention rather than, putting everything in two buckets and giving everyone the same line of treatment.
Yeah, absolutely. And, I can imagine in your role as a startup advisor, and you're managing director of Impact Hub for a long time, in the founder community, burnout, stress and anxiety and imbalance have always kind of been the norm. And so, I'm sure that that's like one of the places where you've seen such a need for this arise out of is how do you maintain work-life balance in startup land and as a founder?
It's super challenging, especially because you're driven, you want to do this, and then you don't notice how you overwork. You don't notice how pressure from all kinds of sides start to pile up. It boils down to those incremental little things that add up, and suddenly you're in the rabbit hole. My co-founder and I, we're both runners, and we see building a company as a marathon and not as a sprint. So we leave space for recovery. We leave space for self-care, for meaningful connections that have nothing to do with work. We leave space for massive curiosity and a lot of silliness also in between, to make sure that we're not just on that one route, with banging and breaking things, and because again, it's a long journey. And of course, we do track our physical and mental health. We use Earkick.
Yeah, of course. If you had to give one lesson learned to other founders from your entrepreneurial journey thus far, what would your number one lesson learned be, or piece of advice?
Okay, so I really, for me at least, it was picking the right co-founder and picking the right people who back you in terms of money or resources or smartness. I was incredibly lucky to have found my perfect co-founder, and also to have found the perfect lead investor with LDV and Evan and you guys. It's the basis. It's the fundamental things that you need to have in place before you start this crazy journey, because there are so many surprises, so much going on that you can't control, at least that you can control. If you do your due diligence, if you let yourself take a moment and build that basis really well. That has been, this is my second company, a big learning from my first company. And I would advise everyone to not rush with that part. They can rush with other things, but not with the people that are going to embark on that journey to the end of the world.
Absolutely. People are everything, is what we believe. And that's why we always say we invest in the people who are building businesses powered by visual tech, because it's the most imperative part. So last question that we always follow up with. If it wasn't Earkick, what would have been your alternative career choice?
Oh, wow. So I think, to be honest, I'm in the right place now. Mental health is such a real and such a global challenge. And I believe I can have such a tremendous impact together with everyone else in that mission that I wouldn't want to be in any other place right now than here. Yeah.
That's fantastic. All right, then I'm going to ask one last question too. All right, as a runner, where's your favorite place to run?
Oh, that's an easy one.
Yeah.
Outside. No, outside and preferably next to water. We live close to the lake, or in the mountains. It's a whole different experience because you breathe that fresh air. Your eyes see that wonderful landscape, and you really feel alive. The good thing about running is that you have to focus on breathing, and you have to focus on in the moment. You can't go wandering about, and that is really what makes the whole thing such a good thing. That you're in the moment, you're doing something for yourself, and you're breathing. You're alive. Yeah,
absolutely. Experiencing the joy of the nature around you, always a win. Well, Karin, it's a pleasure to learn more about Earkick and about your journey to building Earkick and what makes you so passionate about making mental health measurable and real time. Thanks so much for taking the time to chat. It's been a real pleasure. Hope to talk more soon.
Thanks so much, Abby. It was a real pleasure, and it was great talking to you.